Test. That works. Okay. Okay, awesome. Hello, everyone. I hope you enjoyed lunch. For those of you who are with us in person, Velvet Taco is always one of my favorite places when I come to Oklahoma. Sorry, do you want me to talk quieter? Okay. Welcome to our next session titled Countering Student Disengagement in the Classroom. I'm personally super excited about this one because we're going to hear firsthand from our amazing panelists, our faculty and student panel, about their experience with this. So a bit about me really quickly. My name is Tanya Nolan. I'm the Strategic Account Lead for OU at Top Hat. I've been working with OU for 3 years now and had the privilege of working very closely with lots of folks across the campus. So I've worked with the admin and provost office, OUIT, and various colleges, departments, and individual across the campus, including some of our panel members today. So before we get started, I want to just take a quick step back and do a quick intro to Top Hat for those of you who are just joining us. Top Hat's origin story started out with our classroom engagement tool as a way for professors to interact with their students and create an engaging learning atmosphere inside the classroom. We've now evolved into an all-in-one platform that professors can leverage before, during, and after class, whether that class is in person or remote or hybrid, similar to how we are right now. Hello, everybody who's joining us from home. And what this allows you to do is increase engagement. And this is whether you're using Top Hat questions, Top Hat slides, pages, testing, or digital textbooks, as you saw Shashank walk us through in the last session. We know how hard it is today for everybody, whether you're a student or a faculty member, to stay focused and engaged with so much going on in the world around us. We've seen how Top Hat can help with this by providing instructors a way to bring in interesting, relevant topics that make students curious and interested in what they are learning, as well as help them draw connections between what they're doing in class and what's going on in the world around them. And this is just one of the themes that you're going to hear about in our discussion today. So now, without further ado, let's hear and let's meet our amazing panel members. Okay, so first up, we have Dr. Janelle Cavazos, Master Teacher and Curriculum Coordinator for Introductory Psychology. Let's give a round of applause. To my left, we have Professor Sharad Cravens, Instructor of Marketing and Supply Chain Management and Director for Center for Student Success. We have Taylor Mashigan, undergraduate student and teaching assistant. And last but not least, Hannah Baskin, graduate student and former teaching assistant. Thank you all so much for being here with us. We're so excited to hear from you. And this is the first time we've actually had students on stage with us here at Top Hat and OU. So this is the first, and we're doing it here. Okay, so Professor Cravens, I'd love to start with you. Could you start by telling us a little bit about the course you teach and what initially led you to use Top Hat there? What was the challenge that you faced that you thought Top Hat could address?
So there's actually two answers to that question. In my role as director of the Center for Student Success at Price College, which is our business school, we teach career readiness, and the students are required to take transitioning to the workplace, advancing to the workplace, 2 one-hour courses before they graduate. We co-developed a textbook with Top Hat. We worked together on that. For each of those classes, it's an evergreen text. It's based on the National Association of Colleges and Employers curriculum in terms of the pillars that allows them to be successful, especially with regard to the human skills. And so they take that, it's a once-a-week class. That's one of those classes where you really have to manage attendance, classroom engagement, and we've used Top Hat to do that through the reading assignments, through the follow-up quizzes, and more importantly in class, we actually use the geofence there. The other course I teach, which is Principles of Marketing and Supply Chain, and then in the spring I teach Services and Experience Marketing, and sometimes other marketing courses, but I use that in all of my courses. The Principles of Marketing and Supply Chain section that I teach, each section is our integrated business core. So we teach that, I teach that as a cohort with my peers, with a couple of other professors who we teach that, they develop their companies, their products. So it helps me a lot there as well in terms of the key assignments, getting them to do what they need to do. I don't have to worry about attendance in that class because I'm typically their third lecture of the three of us that teach in that class. But one of the things I found overall in terms of engagement, little things that the students are competitive about, whether it's attendance, points on the assignments, and I use Top Hat as my extra credit. And so they can get anywhere, depending on how many questions I want to ask, they can get anywhere from 10 to 15, 20 points per lecture if I'm feeling extra generous. And so when I get that question at the end of the semester, can we do extra credit? They know the answer is no. One of the things I think that we often find is after a lecture, they never look at the slides again, they never look at the notes again, unless it's right before exams. Because they have anywhere from on average 10 questions to answer, they don't always get them right. I do give them 1 point per question, half completion, but they're extremely competitive. None of them want to have, if it's 100 points, they don't want to have 98, 97. So I leave it open till the end of the semester. Actually, I leave it open a couple of days past the last day of class, past dead week, just so they can go in and they will go chapter by chapter and answer every one of those questions. And so I look at it as a learning tool, right? Because it's forcing them to go back through, think about it, and it's more difficult for them to answer it correctly in class. I mean, outside of class than it is in class when you're there guiding them. So hopefully I didn't go over, but all right.
That's great. I love hearing about how it brings out the competitive streak in students, and then in turn, it gives them better results in class.
Yeah.
Awesome, thank you. Dr. Cavazos, can we hear a little bit about your introductory psychology course, and could you share why you started using Top Hat?
Sure. Is this on? We're working? Do I need it on? Oh, there we go.
There we go.
Wait, one more time? Sorry. I was focusing on the mic and like, is it green? Is it green? More time on my mask.
No, of course. So can you tell us a little bit about your introductory psychology course and why you started using Top Hat?
Yeah, so my classes are very, very different. So I have 500 students in each of my classes. I typically, especially in the fall, teach 2 of those courses. So I have 1,000 students across 2 classes. And then I coordinate the curriculum for the other sections of intro psych, which are anywhere from 30 to 60 students, typically taught by adjunct instructors, graduate students, who are managing those smaller classes, both in person and online. So my big reason for starting Top Hat, and I've been using Top Hat for 10 years now, was the classroom engagement piece, which is really the only thing that they had at the time. Because in classes of 500, you got to do something, you've got to be able to, to get them all working together on something that's interesting and exciting and where I could keep their attention. And I knew even in the back of the room that they were interested in what was happening and contributing to the discussion. So that's really where I started. I had tried a couple of other solutions that had some pretty fatal flaws as far as significant tech issues and things like that. Finally settled on Top Hat, and I really haven't gone back since then, because it allowed me to do exactly what I wanted with the different question types that were able to do everything from the typical exam prep multiple choice questions to like fun survey questions. What do you think about? I can do word clouds. And my classes are lower division. It's a 1,000 level class. Most of the students are 18. It's about 95% first year students. So fun is really important. Keeping them engaged in a big gen ed class is really important. And this tool has allowed me to do that. And then I've just sort of moved on and evolved as the Top Hat platform has moved on and evolved. So now we do the in-class participation still, but now I do the same geofencing attendance, which is coming really handy. And I use the Top Hat text, so I can, update, add things on the fly anytime. It's evergreen, like you mentioned. I'm able to put in my own voice, videos, things like that anytime, really integrate between the text and the lectures really seamlessly because they're both my content. So, so I know what exactly is in it, and that everything in it is something I want them to get out of it. I want them to learn. And then we use Top Hat for all of our exams as well. So it's now really a very full, well-rounded solution that my classes just couldn't run without at this point.
Great, thank you. So different classrooms or even meeting rooms, they all have their own vibe. Can you describe the atmosphere of your classroom when you're using Top Hat and what you do to create that energy, especially in a class of 500 students?
I mean, I go for fun because again, it's a gen ed intro level class. My job is to keep them interested and engaged while teaching them really important things that I 100% believe that they're going to need for the rest of their lives. And so I start every class with music. When the students come in, there's a playlist. We try to be very fun, very exciting. I have teaching assistants, we'll talk about them later, I'm assuming, but I have around 10 teaching assistants in each of my 500-person classes, and they are also up and walking and engaged and asking the students, you know, how was your day? How was your weekend? Do you have any questions? And so there's a lot of movement and a lot of hopefully energy building that goes on. And then gets kind of quiet, you know, I'm talking, and then one of the Top Hat questions will go up and instantly the whole room just like starts talking again, which is great because that's exactly what I want to see happen. In my classes, the Top Hat questions are always open everything, you know, open book, open notes, open TAs, open friends, like whatever you want to do, talk about it, get engaged. And so as soon as I open a Top Hat question, all the TAs pop back up again, and they're all walking around to their sections, asking the students, you know, what do you think about this? Why did you put that answer? Why do you think it's this? And so there's tons and tons of conversation going on. It tends to be, you know, quiet at first. They sort of think about the question, and the harder the question is, the quieter it stays for longer. So I can really kind of gauge that. And then everybody just starts talking until I call time. And so it's a very fun, dynamic atmosphere, and that's definitely what I want to have.
Oh, we love hearing that. It's great when the question on the board that maybe sometimes you wouldn't have normally got that response, especially it's kind of scary, especially if they're 18 years old, 500 students. It's scary to put up your hand, but I love hearing that it creates like an abrupt discussion throughout the class. That's exactly what we want to hear. Awesome, thank you. Professor Craven, so I understand you also use Top Hat in class and assign questions post-class. We saw Shrad give us an example earlier of our in-class discussions. Can you walk us through how you use the Top Hat in-class discussions in your class?
Okay, sure. So one good thing about the in-class discussion using Top Hats is it helps you from classroom management. So that was something I forgot earlier. I don't have to tell them to close their laptops, put their phones away, because you basically lock down the browser because they're doing that. But often what we were talking about last night is that I often use the questions not so much for them to choose the right answer, but to discuss why one answer is better than the other, why this concept doesn't apply. Especially we're covering market research right now. And so the questions themselves are an excellent teaching tool. And I think you get a different level of engagement from them versus if you're just walking them through slides or sharing theory with them. But when you actually help them answer the questions to themselves. So I guess I kind of do like your TAs, but from the podium in terms of doing that.
Thank you very much. And just to expand on that, so I know after class, you also assign questions from class to students. Can you share that helps both students who were in class and then specifically those who might have missed class or were absent?
So one interesting thing about those that may have missed class, I don't get those emails anymore in terms of I'm absent. What do I need to do to get caught up? They actually log in. So in my my IBC section of marketing principles of marketing, I think we have 82 students. And so I might have 76, 77 in the classroom, but I always have 3 or 4. So they automatically log in and attempt to follow, even though it's not on Zoom, attempt to answer the questions. But that's when I generally know there's always a group of them that aren't on cue with the others.
Great, thank you. Thank you so much, Professor Cravens and Professor Cavazos. I'm going to turn it over to Hannah and Taylor now. exciting part of this section. So Taylor, I'm going to start with you if that's okay. You were a student in Professor Cavazos's class before you became a TA in the course. Can you share how using Top Hat helped you specifically as a student?
Yes, definitely. So in a lot of the larger lecture courses that you have to take as a freshman, it can be a lot of information thrown at you at one time. So having the chance to pause the lecture, take a moment to really absorb what you're being taught, and speaking with my peers about what's going on helps me to retain the information along with them, because then if my friend next to me isn't understanding or quite grasping what's being covered, instead of just continuing on with more information and more information being thrown at you, you have the opportunity to really dive into the different concepts and work around where you may be missing the information, so you help retain it better.
Great, thank you. Now we're gonna look at the other side of it. And I'd love to learn more about how your experience with Top Hat as a TA helped you connect to your students.
Definitely. So despite being so close in age to the students who I TA, it's still, there's always a disconnect between our roles. And so a lot of times students can feel intimidating about asking questions to different people, even though I'm not the professor, I'm not super far in age from them, it can still be scary for those students. But giving the opportunity to pause the class and have everyone talking, it really encourages students to ask if they do have a question. Whereas in larger lectures, especially at 500, a lot of times you're not going to be getting one person raising their hand in front of all those students. So it helps really connect that way, and then opens up channels for even outside of class. People are more willing to ask you different things or come up with new ideas, really understand the information better.
Great, thank you. Okay, Hannah. So you were also a TA for Dr. C for a long time. Now in grad school, congratulations on helping to manage the course. Could you describe some of the ways you've used Top Hat in the course to draw connections between the lecture, the readings, and the homework?
As a student or as a, because I took the class also.
So would love to hear actually both sides of that experience. Yeah. This is a great perspective. We get it all.
Yeah, so I actually took Professor Claus's class my freshman year of college. I have been here at OU now for 7 years. So I've seen it from quite literally all sides, because I've been a student, I've been an undergraduate TA, a graduate TA, and instructor of record for this course. So I am very familiar with Top Hat and all its little quirks. So I think as a student, what I liked was having everything on, even as an instructor and a TA, was having everything on one singular platform. Because sometimes when, I take classes, like my professors will have, readings in this textbook, but this lecture slides are in Canvas and then different modules. But with Top Hat, it's all in one place. So whenever I was studying or trying to help a student figure something out, we could switch really seamlessly between this section of the textbook and this portion of the slides. I also like that I took a lot of really big classes my freshman year. Chemistry is the one that sticks out to me because chemistry has clicker questions. And the thing that I didn't like about the clicker questions, I liked that they kept me engaged, but I wasn't able to see the questions after class. What I like about Top Hat is after the professor's done presenting, they can set the slides to review, so then the students can go back and look at what they answered for the questions, what the question was, and that helped me with studying, because I was able to see, like, okay, in class, here's what wasn't making sense to me, so here's what I can focus on. And then as an instructor, I like it because I could see how students were doing with the concept in class. So, we go over a couple of slides over the concept, and then I ask the question. And if their answers were kind of split, I would pause before showing them the correct answer and maybe give them like a little hint or an explanation, or tell them to think about something a specific way. And then I would reopen the question and let them discuss amongst themselves and change their answers on it. And that seemed to really help, because they kind of seemed to understand it more. And I took very similar approach to Dr. C, and I did I was encouraged lots of chatting during questions and lots of just asking me tons of questions, and yeah.
Great, thank you. Okay, so Taylor and Hannah, this question is for both of you. What advice would you give to professors who are just starting out? So any of you at home, any of you in this room, in order to make Top Hat the most effective that it can be for students from a student perspective?
I think one of the most helpful things is starting with using it in class for a lecture. Because you can keep very easily keep your own style of slides and questions and everything. It's really easy to integrate into Top Hat. So you don't have to change a ton about your teaching style, but you're giving students new opportunities to be engaged. So one thing in a class of 500 people, it's really easy to get distracted by what's going on around you, but there is the incentive of, my participation points come from paying attention in class. My exams, I do well if I pay attention in class. So the connectivity between Top Hat and the slides gave me more incentive to pay attention despite, what everybody else around me was doing in that 500-person class.
Yes. Also trying to thought for a second. I would highly recommend for professors to use Top Hat. It's such a great way to make sure that, as you were saying, everyone stays engaged and is really attentive during your lectures. And giving students the time to talk about what you're teaching helps that information stick much better. And then after you're finished with the question on the screen, it displays how many people voted for which answer choice. So if the answers ever split between two different things, students are not feeling alone in knowing that there's something that is missing from their understanding. And then that way, as well as a professor, where something may have gotten a little bit confusing for the student so that you're able to clarify that before the exams.
That's definitely a common theme that we hear about, especially in classes similar to intro psychology and the career readiness courses, where everybody is in these large classes for the first time. It really helps them not feel alone because they can see that maybe, 50% of the other students also didn't get the correct answer, and that's okay because this is new and we're all learning together. Thank you for that. Okay, last question, and then we'll turn it over to the audience if we have time. So for Professor Cravens and Professor Cavazos, this question is for both of you. What is some practical advice you would give to an instructor who wants to get started with implementing more formative assessment in their course? Whoever wants to go first.
So formative assessment?
Yes.
I think the advice I would give just in general and working with Top Hat is using it as a tool, and so just like when we create those assessments, it's helpful. I know I was just thinking about as we talked about the questions, often I'll have everybody got it right except for maybe one or two, right? And so it's an opportunity for me to focus on the wrong answer and what's right about it, what's not, in terms of doing that. That happens as well. But I think in general, just like anything else, if you have a buddy that you can work with, someone that's teaching the same course, helps a lot that's used it. But just jump in and use it. There aren't any fatal errors that you can make or anything like that. You can correct them afterwards. It's real easy to go in and give everyone a point for the question. And I think it'll become more strategy in terms of how you want to engage with the students, how much feedback you want from them. Because again, if it's 1 point, they will fight for that 1 point. They will come to your office. So if you're having, so just keep that aware. So if it is formative and you're not trying to, then I would be very casual about it, because otherwise you can create a lot of out of the classroom engagement, which is good.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, all of that for sure. I think the only thing I would add is start slow. I think that it's really easy to see when you're picking up a new tool, whatever that tool is, all the possibilities, which is amazing. But then on the other side of that is overwhelming, and that's a fine line.
Yeah.
And so being able to say, okay, so this semester, I'm gonna make a goal of adding 5 questions into each lecture, and that is all I'm doing, and that's the only thing I'm gonna look at, and that's great. And then the next semester, maybe I'm gonna make a goal of, assigning some homework or something like that, so that over time, you're developing this really cool program, but at any one time, you're not just drowning in the possibilities and in the workload that none of us have time to do. And even small changes really can make a big difference when it comes to being able to pause in the middle, like we've all said, and have those interactions and have those experiences, and being able to model those things for the students. At least, again, I've got mostly young students. but being able to model not just, here's a right answer, here's a wrong answer, but why did you think through that? If you got this wrong, why was it wrong? If I had changed it to make answer choice C correct, what would that look like? So I'm showing them without explicitly saying, here are the ways you should study, because then they just sort of, tune it out. But I'm demoing that for them, sort of in line, like, here's these higher level ways of thinking, that they can hopefully then take and use in their own study and their own practice. But it doesn't take that long to write a question and then see it up there, have them do that activity, and then again, turn around and me talk about it in class and be able to use it. And then, the only other thing, I said one thing, the only other thing would be, to not be afraid to try some fun things. So again, totally depending on the course you teach and the level, if you are a very serious course that, then maybe this is just ignore. But in my classes anyway, I try very hard to do sort of a mix of, here's a question like you're gonna see on an exam, here's a serious try hard, this is gonna be an advanced question, to things like, what's your favorite whatever, or do you think that, are you more of a morning person or a night person? Let's take a class survey.
Yeah.
Things like that are more designed to foster community feel. I tie it back to the course material, I really do, but still it gives them that chance to talk to each other, and it gets them like going with their neighbor, talking to their TAs, things like that, about things that are just community building. And that in turn makes them feel more comfortable to then ask the harder questions later, brings them back to class more often, and all those other things that are really wrapped up in those experiences. And again, it's not super hard to do. So starting slow, big impact, and then allowing yourself to sort of build slowly from there.
And then can I add one more thing too that I found is that don't get hung up on creating the questions. One of the
Yeah.
things that I found really well, that works really well is, for instance, with Stuken, they have a lot of quiz banks. And so I'll actually use those quiz questions during the lecture, right? And so then it helps them when they go back and do it on their own. McGraw-Hill, for example, especially the definition driven, where they'll have like 5 ones and they'll have to match. You can do that in Top Hat and you can create those really quickly. But by doing things that assist them when then they go do their McGraw-Hill Connect assignment, they've already seen it. And I think it helps and enables them to get through their reading assignments easier as well.
Sure. Or, and of course, those questions are all online. We don't use them
Yes.
for exams,
Yeah.
but for formative assessment, that's fantastic.
Yeah.
Or get you some good undergraduate TAs and some great graduate students.
Because
Because I'll tell you, I mean, we are very busy people, and sometimes we write questions and they're interpreted completely differently by our students. We know that this happens, and I've had all of my team help write questions. I've had them vet questions, like, does this make sense to you? Is this asking what I think it's asking? And not only has it freed up my time and resources, but it's given them such, I think, valuable experience in seeing what it's like from the other side of having to, generate questions, of being able to, anticipate what the answers are gonna be. And it's given them that experience in developing skills and pedagogy and things like that, that they'll be able to take to later classes, whether they want to go into teaching or not. So I mean, if you have those resources and those abilities to be able to grab some students and have them help you, use it. It's good for you, it's good for them.
Thank you. Danielle, do we have time for questions?
Yes, yeah.
Oh. Great, okay. Go team. Okay, so I'd love to open it up to the floor or to our virtual floor. If anybody has any general questions or any specific questions for our faculty or student panel members.
How do you connect it with the in-person classes? You said that there was asynchronous online. Are you able to incorporate similar things for those online classes?
For me? Yeah, so the sections run very, very similar. So basically I take my in-person slides, including the questions that are embedded in them, and make those slides available for the in-person, for the online courses. And then in between the slides, I embed lecture videos as just kind of another slide. So they're really having a fairly similar experience, only, they're looking at a slide, and then hearing a lecture, going over those slides, and then they're answering a question. They don't get the benefit of the in-class friend group participation, or me kind of going back and saying, why did you pick the answer that you picked? I can't really facilitate that in an online class, but then we do discussions and things like that that kind of, make up for that. But yeah, they run side by side, same slides, same everything. Only difference is I embed lectures in the online slides and not in the in-person slides because they have me.
So how does this work with Canvas?
It syncs with Canvas, so the students can access Top Hat through Canvas directly, and I have to stay on top of that in terms of syncing, especially attendance and their scores. But they've become accustomed to it. They go to Top Hat, they can see their scores in Top Hat. They know eventually it will show up in Canvas, but it's really easy to do. Usually I'll do it before I leave the classroom. I'll go ahead and sync it so it's there because they do watch it. But that's no
For
problem.
the textbook, so I mean, you don't use the textbook, but,
Okay.
but for the textbook, like the homeworks and things like that, they sync automatically. So I
Yes.
don't have to think about it. It just, when the due date hits, they move over into Canvas into their own columns and they sync automatically. For attendance and participation, we do that manually. We do use it as like a CSV, spreadsheet, upload, download, that kind of situation. Mostly because I sort of ask a number of questions. I don't know how many I'm gonna get to. I don't know what I'm gonna get through. And then participation is 5 points a day. So like basically I have to take those questions and turn them into 5 points. And then upload it in my classes of, because I have so many. I have a grad assistant whose job it is to manage the grade book, and he does that. If I had a smaller section, I could definitely do it myself, but there's just so many that he does that for me.
Yeah, and for our career readiness, we do use the textbook, and it does push
Yeah.
quiz scores. They take their quizzes in Top Hat, and it automatically pushes, yes.
Add something to that. So for those of you just starting out, so these are experts, so they do occasionally reach out to us for help, but if you're starting out, you are not on your own. We have the amazing Golden Milligan at the back who will share his contact information. He will help you get started and sync your course with Canvas and walk you through to make sure you're prepared for the first day of class, so everything runs seamlessly. So just let us know, we're here to help you. We have a whole team here. Any other questions? Yes.
So this is a little different. Now that we have an enterprise license at the university and, suddenly right before the spring semester, barely before the spring semester, we were able to sign the contract. And then all of a sudden the students weren't paying different prices, whether they were going to Top Hat or through the bookstore. All of a sudden, if you were connected to content that cost, it got rolled into the inclusive access system so that it makes it easier. Everybody pays for it the same way. Has that made, maybe students just don't know the difference when we make a switch like that because they're new to a class or whatever. But any comments about that? Has it made it easier for your students or easier for you somehow?
It's definitely made it easier for me, especially the number of students we have in the career readiness course. Because you always have, and you'd be surprised the students that don't have access to the $39 or so. We actually, for our career readiness course, through our through our scholarship program, I'd have a budget, right? And so we'd have codes that I would be able to give out. And so keeping track of that, but now we don't have to worry about that. It just makes it seamless. I mean, it's excellent. It's very helpful.
Yeah, 100%, I agree. It's made it a lot easier for me. The students, there's a little bit of confusion on what inclusive access is. I do get some emails at the beginning of the semester, like, what is this Bursar charge? Is that a thing I need to actually do? And a couple of questions after the fact. I think, unfortunately, some professors assign books that they then don't turn around and use. And so there's been sort of this popular wisdom that maybe students should wait and then ask the professor, like, are you actually going to use this book? Which is, a totally fair strategy. But it does create a little bit of, them again asking, do I need to have this book? Do I not? But that's been, I would say maybe I had 10 of those emails out of 1,000 students. So, very, very few. Most of them just come in and they're like, great, let's get started. And it's been pretty fantastic not having to worry about them getting in and doing free trials or any of that, because they just already have it,
Mhm.
so. For sure.
Any other questions? Anybody, any questions coming through the chat? Thank you, Shashank.
No, I don't believe there are any questions, no.
Okay. Okay, well, if any questions come to mind, please feel free to reach out to us afterwards. Thank you so much. Let's give a huge round of applause for our management. They're amazing. Perfect. So we have one session left. We're going to hear from Kevin Buck and Geneva Murray on teaching and learning resources. So that session will start at 12:35. In the meantime, we're actually going to put a QR code up, and it's a quick survey. We'd love to hear your feedback on all of the sessions today. So just a couple of quick questions. We'll put it up again at the end of the day, but if you have any feedback for us, we're always looking for ways to improve, and we'd love to hear from you. Thank you again, everybody. See you at 12:35.